Welcome to the Tribute Lounge. I'm Mark Fawcett.
Whoa, wait.
Welcome to the Tribute Lounge. I'm Shane Johnsen, and that's Mark Morrison behind the camera. We left Fawcett at home because that guy knows nothing about riding corduroy. Today, we're all talking stance angles and how we're going to kind of attack this corduroy we're dealing with. I set the crew up 30, positive 9. Tuck my knee in a little bit, bring this shoulder forward, kung fu stance the whole way. Zach, my boy, what are you at?
I'm at 18 in the front and 9 in the back as well.
So we have another posy. Hylas?
I think it's about 21 and 6 or 5.
Positive
I got
6?
EST, positive 6.
Yeah, increments of 3. Mikey, where are you at?
18 and 0.
Beauty. And Takumi?
This is 26, no, 27.
Yeah.
This is negative 3.
Negative 3. And Morrison, our filmer, where are you at, buddy?
I am riding 15 and negative 6 right now.
Oh, you're the most freestyle-y guy out of the mix.
23 width.
Beauty. Carmen's joined the crew now too. Carmen, what are your angles?
I got plus 16 on my front foot and minus 6 on my back.
All right, we're back off hill from Salmo. That was the team stance angles. Now we're going to deep dive into our 3 variations of stance angles, basically.
The categories.
The categories, which are?
Well, first of all, rip and groomers, like carving.
So bank slalom, carving, corduroy, terrible icy places like Apex where I grew up. I love
Yeah.
Apex. Don't get me wrong.
Essentially, boosted angles forward for 2 reasons. 1, to get yourself facing down the hill a little bit more.
Yep.
And 2, a really big one, so you're not booting out toe and heel.
So we're going to call that posy.
And you
we'll
definitely
get into that.
Definitely posy. We'll get in more to why that back foot's got to be posy for that style of riding.
Category 2 is going to be all mountain riding. So that'd be closer to what our filmer Mark Morrison runs with. There's some negative. Mikey. Yep. There's negative back foot and less extreme front foot.
Yep. And even a 0 back foot.
Okay. And then we get into the whole Mr. Shaun White territory where we're like 15-15, which half the...
He doesn't do 15-15.
He
12-12.
He did when they wrote the book for Cassie and the other ski schools.
Okay.
When skiing took over snowboarding teaching, I don't want to get in too deep into this, but somebody decided it was 15, negative 15.
Yeah, I know.
And, oh my God, and for me, it's awful. I know a ton of you ride it, and it makes sense for certain things. So that's going to be our last category.
Actually, funny enough, some studies that have been used and recognized by Cassie indicate that you shouldn't have a bigger spread for your knees than add it all up 28 degrees. So if you're if you're 15, negative 15, you're at 30.
Interesting.
Yeah, a 30 degree
Everybody
spread.
get that?
So if you're at 30, you don't want to be anything less than 0.
Yeah.
So like you, 30 and 9, great.
Yeah.
You could even go 30.
Well, that's how I get that kung fu
You could
thing
go to like
right?
39. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, 39.
Well,
I should try 39.
Yeah.
I'll try that.
But anyway, I'm sure there are exceptions, and people with different builds can do different things.
So what are we calling that category?
But that's a really good little point of reference for people that are watching the show. That when you add those numbers up, you shouldn't have a differential of more than 30 degrees.
That's cool. I didn't know that. So that last category we're going to call freestyle.
Yeah, and
because
I would
switch
say
riding's going to be easier.
Knowing what our pro slope stylers do now and such, it's like 9-9.
Yeah.
Most of them are about 9-9. I think a bunch of them are 12.
Or 18.
Or 12-9. Yeah. There's hardly any of the like true park riders now riding anything more than 15.
Wow.
It's really straight. It's really straight.
I always look back at what Terrier was doing back in the day.
It's straight.
It's
I wouldn't say narrow, but it's not the 24s and stuff anymore either.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're bent in the middle of the board and
Okay. because Terrier's freestyle was 32 and 0 half the time, and that's why that method was so beautiful.
Yeah, he used to do some stuff like that, and he rides a lot of posi now too. And
Terrier, if I got it wrong, you can comment below. But
anyway, so if we start in with chatting about carving stance, like pretty strong posi.
Yep.
Posi being positive angles,
which I love.
Forward. I do too, because I come from that background. So the old alpine stances we used to run in the 50s, mid 50s, both feet. They still actually do.
My
hover
M6
around
is
that.
sitting up there if you can see it. That's
And I think that had a 45.
I think it was 45, 30.
And then a high 30s or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, like we chatted about earlier when we just briefly described it, you want your feet forward so you can like look down the hill, so your hips face down the hill a little bit more. Obviously, another really big reason, no toe and heel drag.
And this is what I call the Kung Fu stance. And that's why I talked about when we were on the hill, how I bring my shoulder around and I can get into that vibe because my butt's behind me, my hip's a little more forward, and I can have both arms in front of me, Kung Fu style. Takumi knows.
For sure. I mean, essentially too, it's just if you're making round turns, you'll have to have less rotation with the board as you come around. So, and you definitely initiate into those heels, and that's a problem for even a lot of advanced riders is toe turn's dead simple. You just like tip your head in practically and you're into your toe. But initiating those heels, and especially when you've just completed a toe, is a tricky thing. And then having that back foot in particular, posi, makes your hips rotate into the beginning of the heel so much easier.
Yeah.
So here's another thing. You don't have to have your bindings. I'm picking this stance and these stance angles, and I'm sticking with it for the rest of my life. I play with it all the time, and not just for experimenting. Like when I know it's spring, slushy, side hits with the kids, like I go negative. I'm like -6, 21.
Yeah.
And then when we're at Salmo that I didn't go to, I would have been your stance exactly.
Yeah.
I would have been 30 plus 9. 30 and 9.
Which really is the magic number I've discovered over years for riding corduroy. It works with my body, and exactly what Mark said. When I transfer to heel, and another thing I'll sometimes do is remove the high back like I talked about, but when I go to heel, that transfer and the physical style of it as you watch it too is just smooth.
Oh, it's way
easy
smoother.
Drop over, and you're not using your ass to push onto that heel edge. You're transferring all your body weight and your shoulder movement into that too.
Yeah.
So you get more edge contact, you get more stability.
What I was going to say for people that if you're struggling a little bit, even if you're a relatively advanced rider and you're like, yeah, my heel turns suck, go out for a day with posi. Throw that back angle up to 9 or something, and your heel turns will improve. In like the first heel turn, you'll be like, oh my God, I can actually do heel turns.
It's not old school.
And then once you acquire that technique and get it, you can sneak your angle back and you'll be able to keep a lot of it. But the best way to learn it is to
get into that positioning.
Make it easy for yourself to learn and acquire the skill set, and then you can go back to the more challenging stance that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Do yourself a favor. After this, go to Karua, Yearning for Turning, and watch those guys. Watch Nicholas because he's similar stance. And I mean, that guy just eats up corduroy like you wouldn't believe. So that'll give you a really good indication of kind of what we're discussing here. So now moving to All Mountain, why are we then going a little more negative on the back foot? What reasoning is it? Because of powder, we're going to sit back more and pow.
And wider, often.
Often wider.
Often a little bit wider. So obviously that posi, when you can, if you're pushing into the middle of the board, it just behaves a little bit more efficiently.
Yep.
You don't need to be so stacked out with the big angles. So as soon as you go a little bit wider and then slacken that out, you do one thing with riding posi on corduroy and such is there is a bit of extra rotation between your upper body and the board. And when you put that into situations like moguls and powder and stuff, you're going to always find yourself wanting to go to the heels. Where if your back foot's at 0 or negative and you're way more parallel to the board, you also have a lot better suspension in that stance position.
Makes sense, yeah.
And just push through. There's often times when you're free riding where you really got to push that back leg out, those quick, whether it's slashes or some sort of a slow down movement, if you need to pivot that back leg out, especially to the toes, it's a lot easier with that back foot at, a very minimum posi, 0 or negative.
Because I'll go -6 for if I know I'm riding powder, bald face, something like that. And I find the angle of my back knee is a little bit more direct over the edge.
It puts you straight over the edge.
And it really helps the balance when you know you're going to be back seat heavy because you're smashing pow. It makes sense for that.
Yeah.
It really helps that a lot.
I just find I have so much more power to push through with that back foot. Again, riding corduroy, you don't push the back foot out at all. It just follows the front along. But as soon as you get into these maneuvers and situations where you got to push that back foot out or tweak it, jumping, airs, landing, everything, then you're going to want to
definitely more stability with landing.
Be less angle on that back foot, even the front foot a little bit. For the most part, I tell people that your planar, like your hips and chest and everything, should be 90 degrees to the angle of your front foot.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
So
absolutely.
when we're riding groomers and we're really forward, everything can be like this, and you're over that front foot, square to it, I would say.
Yep.
And then when we're free riding, we're a lot more skatey, a lot more sideways. It's more of a motocross bike where we're riding, those crotch rockets that you don't like.
I don't like
because you ride a Harley that's just zero performance in all style.
That's tons of performance. We'll do another episode on that.
No,
I have two enduros.
If you can't tip it over, or if you can't jump it, I don't know what you're
I can jump it. I can jump.
You
the
can jump
Sportster.
it. Yeah,
we
like
can jump
Fonzie
the
over the shark. Okay.
All right, back to
third one.
Back to that. All right, so the third category is freestyle. Mark and I have kind of left that category a couple years ago, but Morrison, our filmer, is deep in that, and he had the stance, especially the night at Salmo, that would offer that the best out of the crew. Although we all kind of went there knowing we were carving, we were going to hammer that place, so everybody made their adjustments. This one being not necessarily -15, +15,
no,
but again, following your ideology too, and that theory of not going over how many degrees?
30 degrees.
30 degrees.
Yeah.
So
like a posi 18, -15, like you're going to start wrenching on your knees.
Oh yeah.
In a negative way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, -15 was a thing for a while. It's less now for freestyle.
Good.
For lots of reasons. Being parallel, it's so skatey. All the rail tricks and everything. You just stand with your chest and hips just super parallel to the edge. Yeah. So obviously, all the switch riding, you want to be able to do everything as well.
That's one of your
switch.
biggest advantages, right?
So mounting a twin perfectly in the middle. Even if you do 12 and -9, you're still going to be a little bit biased. Like it's still going to feel not as good going switch. So tons of people, dead center, angles exactly the same.
So that's another thing to bring up too, is in all these situations, we're also adjusting where we are on the board, big time. And different style boards, twins, free ride boards, freestyle boards, blah, blah, blah. So that in itself, most twins are going to give you an absolute centered stance, and that's easy to achieve. If you're grabbing, whatever free ride board you might be looking at, that's a swallowtail, it's already set back.
It's already set
So
back.
a lot of this stuff will kind of happen in the decision of the board you make. Another thing we need to bring up is we change our forward lean with each of these different aspects quite drastically. Or like in Takumi's case and sometimes mine, we maybe change high backs. Maybe we have no high back. So what's the reasoning in that?
Oh, mobility. Absolutely. And and feel and mobility. So different high backs, we talk about their stiffness or their responsiveness. And so there's some bindings, I mean, you just think about it and you touch into that high back and that board's popping up on edge. And for some people, it's exactly what they want for starting a spin or a jump, etc. And for others like us that want to feel that slow build into the turn, we don't want responsiveness.
No,
we call that surfiness. Yeah. I know there's a million other long adjectives we could use. Unresponsive,
but
touch,
if you
whatever.
watch Takumi, look how low he can get.
Surfy is a great term to use. Yeah. So what happens is he's able to do all this movement before the board starts hooking up on him. So different strokes for different folks for different purposes. Again, the park guys are usually because they want to initiate things really easily and quick and efficiently, they're using pretty stiff stuff.
And adding usually a lot of forward lean.
It depends on what they're after. Yeah, and what tricks
Well,
they're
half
doing.
pipe, they're usually adding a lot of forward lean. Park, not as much.
Park, not as
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah.
Pipe, because the way they carve them.
Yes, you need your knees dropped in. So
major big
know.
heel carve at like 55 kilometers an hour along the flats. Powder, sometimes not so much. Like you
yeah, I don't like
the
it in
board
pow.
just sort of
Yeah.
engages in there. A lot of people want to use and feel their feet. I tend to kind of keep it the same, and I run a little bit more in my front than the back. I find that for me and for a lot of people, your heel turns are initiated with the front high back. Your toe turns are initiated a little bit more with the back toes to start.
Yep.
As you settle into both turns, you want to try and push on both feet. But I find to start a heel turn, it's a little bit up more on that front. So I have a little bit more in the front, a little straighter in the back. That's better for airs and methods and absorption. Yep. If you're in, not a lot of border crossers out there, but the border cross crew, when they like rip, they have crazy terrain in their start sections, like very radical transition and a lot of vertical movement they have to do. They run their high backs quite straight up and down because they need, and they actually even run a narrower stance because they have, when you have a wider stance, you have a shorter vertical pull. So they actually run a bit of a narrower stance, and they can have a bigger range of suspension.
And that could even play over to bank slalom a little bit as well and things like that. So when you tackle Baker, what's your stance for Baker this year?
It kind of depends. There it is. Like, again, I don't do one specific stance. Like, I'll look at what the course is like. Course conditions play a big factor.
Yep.
If you have one of those bad years at Baker when it's full of potholes and just all gnarly and nasty, I run like really wide stance. Yep. I want to have so much control of that tail. Yep. I have that back foot way the hell back there. And then I have just so much more leverage and torque on the board.
Negative on the back foot if it's potholey.
Because zero.
Zero.
Yeah. I'm like 27 and 0 on a real bad year. If it's really clean and it's snowed, and some years it looks like the concrete guys had just come out and refinished it and it's beautiful, then I can run more posy in a narrower stance and get down into like 22 and 3/4 and then I'm running like 30 +9.
We're putting money on you this year, so you better. This is your year, Fozzie. Especially after we lost 2 of the trophies were downstairs in the flood and got kind of damaged. So now we got to bring those golds back up.
They're a little soggy.
They're a little soggy. Yeah. So outside of that, I mean, there's a couple other adjustments when it comes to bindings for FreeRider Freestyle, but they're unique to the companies. Jones, you can flip one of the ankle straps around. It's softer up top when you're free riding. It's stiffer if you flip it around the other way. That's going to be unique to each of your bindings. So just ask questions below. If you have any specifics like that, throw a question in the comment section. Fozzie or myself will do our best to get back to you.
I mean, we got the one big thing we're going to do is some chat in the shop about how to set the bindings up.
Yeah.
So this is big. We talk about the angles and the stance widths, but there's a few little details in setting your bindings on a board that I see like pretty good riders that get it wrong.
Yeah. So let's head into the shop and we'll get this going.
All right. So most people know generally how to mount their bindings onto their board. It's pretty straightforward. 4 screws and 4 holes in most cases. Burton has a track system that uses 2 bolts that go through either on the inside of the disc or on the outside, which are EST. But it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's a few little details that people mess up on. A lot of bindings, this is a Union, for instance, and other bindings that run off of a 4-hole pattern, you can run the disc so that you have adjustability and slidability forward and aft and toe to heel. So the one thing I find a lot of people do by, I guess, just being hasty the night before, getting excited, and they just mount them on there any old way. They get their width right and their angle correct, but they mount them on there way off to the heel or way off to the toe. And you can just, the problems that you're going to have with that. You're going to be dragging your toes or your heels. The other thing is you end up, even if you're just off by a little bit and there's a little bit of heel drag and your toes right just straight over the edge, you're going to have more leverage over your heel edge than you will over your toe. So it's super important to have it balanced. With Union and a couple other companies, they have an adjustable heel cup. So you back off the main strap screws and these other ones, and you can slide this heel cup in and out. And that's actually the primary way to adjust the centering from toe to heel of your boot system. A lot of other companies, you just do it in the disc itself. Some of them, unfortunately, you'll have to decide, do I want that stance width to the 1/8 of an inch, or do I want to have my boot centered? I always would recommend have your boot centered. You'll adapt pretty quick to that 1/8 of an inch one way or another in your stance width. So a lot of discs, the Union ones, for the most part, because of their adjustable heel cup, I run them fore and aft, and so you kind of accomplish both. But you'll see other companies that have discs that are, the holes are offset to one side. So you think, oh, I don't have much adjustability, but all you have to do is flip the disc around, and then you have more going the other way. So you'll have all the options covered with offset discs. The Burton discs are set up like that as well. So that's one of the biggest things I see with people setting their systems up, even advanced riders, is they're just really hasty. They chuck them on there, never have their boot in. Always have your boot with you when you're setting up your bindings so you can like dial it in just perfect. So what I do usually, mount it up, get a good estimate with everything loose. Then I just start looking down and sort of eyesight surveying to see how much overhang I have off the heel and how much off the toe. And you want them, again, as equal as possible. In general, if something is going to drag on the front foot, it's going to be your front heel. That's going to like make you hiccup and boot out. And if something's going to grab on the back foot, it's going to be the back toe. But again, in general, just try and line it up the best you can. So I have maybe 1 inch of overhang on this heel. Probably 3/4 of an inch on the toe right now. So I probably, doing nothing else right now. I'm not riding. I'll probably slide it 1/4 of an inch further this way and like really even it out. That wouldn't even it out. I'd have to do it 1/8 of an inch. Then I'll be even. So another big thing I see so often with like really good riders that they neglect to make this adjustment. If you're riding more than 15 degrees of angle in any way, so this is the tip now, and I have this board set up goofy with a brand new binding on there. The binding high backs are usually perpendicular to the like splay line of your foot. But when you're riding, especially this binding set up with a 24-degree front foot angle, and I ride minimum of that, if not more. A lot of people do. Your movement into that heel turn goes in a motion kind of straight backwards, but yet this high back is really angled and sort of twisted. So what you want to do is make the adjustment, and a lot of the bindings have pretty easy rotatable high back adjustments so that your high back is as parallel to the edge of the board as you can get it. So on a Burton probably has the easiest system for this. You just loosen these 2 axis screws that the high back is attached to the rest of the binding with. You often have to loosen them pretty dang loose. And rotate it. And you got to be careful. You can pull both them in too much where it's not seated on to the heel cup very well. So just kind of give it a little play and see. But I have this one now all the way forward. This one's most of the way back. It's seating really well. You tighten them up. And now my high back's almost, it's just a couple degrees off being perpendicular to the edge. And you'll really notice the difference into those heel turns. Instead of just sort of brushing the corner, sometimes almost feeling like you're missing the high back, you'll drive into the whole high back on that heel turn.
All right, everyone, thanks for watching. We really appreciate the support. The views so far have been fantastic. Hopefully we're bringing the content that you guys want to see. This could have been a 40-minute episode, so ask us a few questions below. We'll do our best to get back to
Some or,
Some.
or most of
most. You know, there's a lot going on. We have Turning Man coming, Baker Banks coming, but we'll do our best. Again, thanks so much for the support, and we'll see you soon.